Once upon a time, there was a man who lived all alone at the edge of a great, big, ancient wood. So every morning anyway, even on those miserable winter mornings, he'd go into his forest and he'd be checking his traps and collecting his prey and resetting his traps, doing his whole round. Anyway, coming home one evening, he saw some clothes of his hanging out to dry. Now going inside to his own house, and he was surprised to see how clean and tidy it all was. There was a freshly made fire and a hot meal on the table. So again, the next evening, there was a fire there and a meal with the steam still rising from it. And his clothes all washed and dried and beautifully mended. So he left as usual for the forest early the next morning, but he didn't go all the way. Curious to know who it was, he hid himself in a hazel, under a hazel not far from his house, behind a hawthorn. And after a while, behind the hawthorn, he saw this bright red fox with a big bushy tail just strut past him up towards the door of his own house. And in one move, up on her hind legs, on down with the latch and in through the door, which closed behind her quietly. Yeah, so the man very carefully, very slowly, walked almost like a stranger up to his own door. And he pushed it open, and there was a woman naked by the fire, and there was a fox pelt hanging on the back of the door. "So, I'm here to be your wife," she says. "I'm here to look after you if you look after me." So they lived together in absolute bliss and harmony all through that long winter, until the following spring. One morning the man gets up and he's sipping on his coffee before he goes and does his rounds, and he notices and starts to complain, starts to have a problem with this smell in the house. Small as it was, there was no escaping it. This kind of unnatural, natural, foxy smell. Couldn't stand it. Couldn't live with it, bless him. So the woman, she gets up and she walks across the floor, taking down the fox pelt. She puts it on, and a fox again trots away into the wilderness. I heard somewhere, I don't know if it's true, there's a book, I think, written about it. The travellers, Irish travellers. At some point they had a tradition of burying themselves standing up. Standing erect, vertical, in the ground.
My grandfather had a dog, and the dog once came to me half dead, bleeding, on scars on his body. So the dog was old and crippled, and my grandmother said that it's time for him to go, and my grandfather decided to kill the dog, and so he did, and he buried him in the garden. I guess he thought that he buried the dog, because then I met him next morning when I went to the garden. He came over to me bleeding, with cuts on his body, with the eye sticking out of his skull, begging to be killed again. I guess when you do such a thing, make sure that you do it right.
What was the dog's name?
Guess not important anymore.
Betty. That's a decent load, isn't it? Tidy done. Yeah. And I know I can do a lot of this alone too.